I work with the Three Forks of the Flathead Wild and Scenic River system here. And I'm going to share with you how we've developed a system for sharing river condition and information with our visitors um, to satisfy some needs. I'm looking forward to at the end brainstorming on how you maybe do that in your area, and maybe we can learn from each other. As I get started here, I want to make sure I give a credit shout out to Indigo Scott, wherever she is in the world. Haven't crossed paths in a little while, but Indigo Scott worked with me, I don't know, maybe about 5 years ago, and she was a river ranger here. And she and I brainstormed this system in concept. She did work out some of the how-tos and processes that we're still using here to this day. So credit to Indigo Scott. Okay, so the origin of our condition reporting system here on the Flathead has a number of places where it started. I used to get swamped with phone calls from people wanting what was really pretty simple answers initially, but it used to take up a lot of my time. They wanted to know, well, how long does it take to float from here to here? What is the CFS? Like pretty simple stuff. But then it would devolve into these longer conversations that were not a good use of my time. Like, what will the weather be? What's the bug forecast? And I couldn't get myself out of these conversations. And I'm a chatty person. So it's like I gotta figure out a way to like not even pick up the phone here. So there was that. We tried for a long time to enable our front desk to have that information, that like float time, CFS, just basic hazard information at the front desk. But our front desk staff just doesn't feel like they can answer those technical questions, and they struggled with like an authentic voice, if that makes sense. And too often, the front desk would have the answers and they would say that stuff, but then the person on the line would say, "Yeah, but you're not a river ranger. You're not the river manager. I want to talk to them," because they weren't able to say this information with like oomph that convinced the visitor. They just want to hear from the river ranger. Um, Also, I was starting to notice we had a system for noting river conditions and information that, again, we were using internally to inform how we respond to these types of inquiries. There's some pretty poorly worded stuff. I'm going to give you an example here in a little bit, but it was not objective. It was not factual. It was not. It was sort of like who could write the most outrageous description of the river, and it was starting to make me nervous, even from a liability standpoint, that we're giving out some information here that's not informative, objective, and somebody might make a bad choice or put themselves in an unsafe situation based on what we've said. And then the last one is we just realized we were having unmet needs. People who are wanting information, they're planning their trip tomorrow. It's 6 o'clock at night. They want the information now. They wanted information on the weekend, so on and so forth. So we're just having these unmet needs in a variety of ways. Unmet need for myself to protect myself from these conversations, and unmet needs from the visitors. So that's kind of how this system originated. And so we really started thinking hard about what is the relevant information that we can distribute properly. Float times, how long it takes to float at this point in the season from here to here. Flows, high, medium, low, how much gravel bar exposure there is. In our area, you're going to want to know that. Like there's certain stretches of the river, the upper North Fork, for example, you can float it for quite a period of time as long as you're willing to get out of your boat and push through some gravel bars. And like you might not want, everyone's got to get out of the boat to do that. You might not want to have grandma with you that day, but if you're, ready to rock and jump out of the boat and push, it's still viable. Also, just hazards type of stuff, where the strainers are, where the channel changes are. Also, relevant closures. It could be a road closure that's impacting access to a site. It could be a fire closure, trail closure, things like that. This is information we felt comfortable sharing, and we knew that we could. Not relevant information to share, or there's issues with distributing this, like things everybody want. Where's your favorite lunch beach? Yeah, that's not relevant. We don't need to give that information out. And the example I referenced before about like these really creative reports, sweet Nar on Pump House Rapids. That's the description that was going out. It's like that's not informative. That's not factual. how is someone supposed to do something with that? Um, and also just people straight up saying, how should I row through these rapids? Do I go left? Do I go right? And in some cases, like, yeah, as river professionals, we know there's some rules of thumb, but actually my advice might be dependent on the boatman's experience or the boat that they have. I might say one thing for a kayak, I might say another thing for a, 14-foot cataract. And really, I don't want to be making those predictions for people or advice for those people. I want them to make their own decisions for themselves. And then again, the bug forecast, that's not information that's relevant for us to share. And really people wanting to say how long, but how long will it take me to float from X to Y? And it's like, well, I don't know. How often are you going to pull out to fish? How often are you going to take lunch? How many beers are you going to have along the ways? And so we really got down to wanting to focus on the things I show on the screen here on the left. This is information that we have that we can share the float time that it took us. Here's what the flows look like. Here are the hazards. Here's relevant closures. This is the stuff we're going to stick to, okay? The other stuff, fill in the blanks, and you figure out where that sweetener is for yourself. So yeah, and I use this visual here as an example of some of that gravel bar type of stuff. This is not the same exact place on the river, but really close. So we can talk CFS in our area. Most of the locals actually talk depth where the depth of the water at the gauges, so 5 feet at West Glacier. But so few know what that means of what the condition actually looks like. Is it super gravelly and you're gonna have to pull your boat through that channel, or we got great flow right now? Um, so that's really the kind of quality information people were looking for. So we centered ourselves on that information and we developed this reporting system based on the observations that we gather from our patrols, and then we project that into a web-based reporting system that's been fairly easy for us to maintain. So part of that system is we set up this elements of condition reporting. So we have, in my slide here on the right side, I'm giving some samples. This is the guidelines we have as we prepare these reports. We gather our observations from our daily patrols. We provide a description of the current conditions in a consistent, easily interpreted manner. So we have pre-written out what we're going to pull and write into our report. So we're not tempted to do that sweetener type of statement. And when we know something is that high to moderate flow, we will use the pick from that list there to use that consistent language. This language is descriptive, not proscriptive. It doesn't say what to do. We're saying that there's few rocks and obstacles exposed at this point, not you're going to want to dodge this, you're going to want to do that. And it follows this standard language and format. Honestly, if you look at them back to back, they're almost a little boring to read. But that's the point of it, I think, is so that it is objective and factual, and just keeps it straight and narrow. Let's see here, I got to go to my next slide. Some other elements is that locally we always refer both to CFS from a professional sense and that gauge height from the USGS stations, and we always pull it at noon. That way that if and that's a part of the protocol that we just share out. Hey, this is what it was at noon on this day. And I mentioned earlier, the locals all want to know what the depth was, not CFS. So we'll use that language. We use this system for our non-wilderness locations. We don't use it at our wilderness locations. We don't do as frequent of patrolling up there. And so it could be 3 weeks between a patrol. And so a report from 3 weeks ago is just not informative to somebody planning their trip at 3 weeks later. Also, I'm a big believer in that wilderness is a mystery philosophy, and that people need to be more prepared on their own for the various conditions they can meet. Where we have our capacity, we're interested in high volume service. So that's the front country where the vast majority of visitors are and where it's appropriate to provide this higher enhanced level of visitor service. The report is drafted after every patrol, ideally the same day. We have found that if you wait for 2 days, you might get a little blurry in your memory. There could be inaccuracies or imprecise memories. And again, you'll see on the graphic here some of these picks that we just pull and pluck into the report, and you fill in the blank kind of a thing. Our guidelines are avoid inventing new phrasing. And if you feel that from the pick list, there's something that's not appropriate, that you just can't quite get to what needs to be said, well, then it's a group group project. We will professionally check each other. You don't write out that sweetener statement in the blind and post that. We're gonna like level up with each other. We also refer as consistently as we can to our river guide, the river miles, the proper names of things, and always use that as the foundational thing so as to encourage our visitors to use our river guide, Three Forks of the Flathead float guide as a resource. And then again, big picture, our goal is to provide enough information that people can make their own responsible decisions and that they have an expectation for the conditions that they'll encounter, but no promises of that. We use these definitions routinely so as to also in our reports, so as to maybe elevate the average visitor's knowledge of our river system here. So after a patrol, the River Rangers or I will develop this draft in writing, hard copy, pick those phrases, fill it in. In this case, this was a patrol on July 12th on the lower Middle Fork, Cascadilla to West Glacier. It was 16 miles. It took 5.5 hours, CFS, water depth at the West Glacier station. And then you see that pick of the descriptors from our list below there. And then the changes, season-long type of stuff. We keep these reports hard copy in our office. We do share them with our front desk. Just the way our front desk staff is they like to see these handwritten reports. And then every Monday, our system has been, is that we upload the current round of reports into the Flathead National Forest web portal. And on our web portal, we on the front-facing page of the Flathead National Forest page, we have a button that says River Condition Reports. Boom, right there. Anybody who comes can go just click that button, and you'll see all of the reports from the North Fork and Middle Fork of the Flathead listed chronologically. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a great screen grab of that because it just got cleared for the season. But I have an old one here. But this is the way it will show up. So on the Middle Fork, on 610 Essex to Paola, the length is 7 miles. Float time at that time was 4 hours. CFS, float height, and then those observed conditions. So this is how it shows up on our website. We have a disclaimer there that you need to be aware that they change. Conditions change rapidly, weather, other factors. These are for reference. This is not a guide. And then with our river condition report area, we have we've sort of filtered in around the area other resources about rules and regulations, leave no trace, responsible recreation, and tried to use that as the river conditions entry point as a way to tempt people to go and learn more about the Three Forks and the rules and regulations and other things that they should be consulting as they plan their trip. Oh, let me go back here. I'm about at the end of my presentation. What I wanted to share here before we start any brainstorming is this has significantly cut back on the burden of calls, both to myself and our front desk. And then based on web traffic, this is the #1 most visited element on the Flathead National Forest webpage. This is River Condition Report. And in fact, we've had people who are a little agitated calling to say, I know you post those on Monday, it's not up yet. Can you hurry and get it up? Okay, gosh. Or I've had people say, afterwards, thanks, I planned my trip, just wanted to let you know, here's what we encountered, they're checking in for other reasons, and they'll say, and it was a really great tool to help me plan my trip. So we have met that mark for sure in terms of reducing the internal burden, met visitor expectations. They still don't get the bug report or the weather report. They're okay. They found another way to get that information. I think looking around the corner for us, Reese and I were talking before the call here, staffing challenges. It's fairly easy to post this stuff on our website, but we are down to 1 river ranger. We do expect to still have some fairly robust patrolling, so we do expect to still have the opportunity to gather this information and post it. But I am thinking more deeply here about what are the opportunities to broaden this condition reporting system. We do have a partner here, Flathead Rivers Alliance. I think it's an open question whether they would like to participate and maybe deputize some key members and enable them to gather these this factual information and post it. Well, they wouldn't be able to post. So that's the next question is they wouldn't be able to post it on our website. So would we do that on their behalf? Or maybe they want to stand up their own system. And I have mixed feelings about it. I like the idea of some crowdsourced information. It's not only coming from the Forest Service. There's other great knowledgeable community members who can gather this information and share it. But it also, I feel, would be a little bit of a loss because this is how we also tempt people in and get them to look at the other Forest Service resources we want to share about the river system here too. So I think that is the next step to figure out is can we broaden it and still include those other valuable elements? Um, and then the other thing I was going to share here, and I can't say much about it. I just ran across it last night, but it looks like there's a local person who is developing an algorithm that will predict float times for the river system here. So given what the CFS is, he's projecting that, okay, well, then it would take you, however long to float from here to here. And so how will that be quality checked? I'm wondering. And is there a way to tap into that forecasting component there? We're just taking what we've personally experienced and reporting that. Where is the next level for forecasting what float times would be? So, anyways, I just wanted to share with you how we're sharing our river condition information here through our web portal. And how we then use that as a temptation for people to go and explore more and learn about the other aspects of our river here. And I wanted to turn it over to the audience here to brainstorm, how do you share your river condition information? And what have we missed in this? Is there additional opportunities that we have to share information that we're not doing here currently, or that you are thinking are right before us? So we'll open it up for discussion, and I welcome Risa and James's contributions too, for sure.
Colter, the system is great, but one thing that you have been so careful to do is to come up with the system and kind of self-regulate. If you said if somebody comes up with something different, you as a group, help identify so you avoid the sweet and sour kind of
Yeah.
comment. So that's not self-policing, but the self-regulating creation of new or different stuff. That seems really important. I'm sure you worked on that when you came up with your list that you have, because it seems
Yeah.
really refined.
Yeah, well, we tried to be, and I think our pick list is pretty broad, but acknowledging you can't think of everything in advance. So it's like, okay, well, we might find new circumstances. That's great, but let's check in. I mean, as the river manager, I don't read these reports as they're pumped out. In fact, maybe I do end up with a call, and I'll be like, I don't know, I haven't looked at the reports lately. Um, I'm busy doing other things. I got to go look at it myself to read out what people want. But again, I also got to say, almost everybody now just goes to the website and doesn't bother to pick up the phone. But if we do have a new circumstance to write about, yeah, let's check in with each other. It's just like, signing in public lands when you develop a sign and one person thinks it says this, the other person thinks it says completely different. So our protocol says if this pick list doesn't work for you, let's check in with each other before you go and get creative.
Yeah. And then the new service you have, I could kayak down one section of 7.5 miles. I'm equally skilled as you are, but you just go faster than me. I just like to stop, and you like to, go all the way from beginning to end. So whose time is accurate or whose projected time is better? You know,
Yeah.
but with you guys, if you're basing the reports on your experiences, you kind of have a average pace or something, that you can
Yeah.
depend on.
Yeah, well, we disclose that this is minimal stop time. We're not stopping for fishing, and we say that outright.
Mhm.
And so your float times, your total time may be longer. That's great. Enjoy your
Mhm.
trip.
Mhm.
This is the minimum you can count on.
Mhm. Right. So you say that, and then I'm just thinking about the new person, the new resources come, they would have to kind of qualify their own approach, their own style or something.
That would be something to work out, right? So if we started recruiting some citizen observers whether we would need to disclose that they maybe don't count that time, so we have a consistent approach, the
Yeah,
stoppage time,
yeah.
or that they do have a different approach. Yeah, that is something to
Hmm.
address so that we're reporting at least in a consistent manner.
Hmm. Right, right. Yeah, they could stop for lunch and then just stop the clock and start it again or something like
Yeah.
that to make it consistent with yours.
Yeah, well, I will share when we have closures, I mentioned that it's definitely been helpful to raise the alert. Hey, this stretch to this stretch is closed. Fire has closed the road to this area, or um, there's fire in this area, but the river is still open. But be advised, there is aircraft in the area. That people have started to learn. We put those little nuggets in there, and then that answers questions as well.
That's posted to your website. That's where they'll see it.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that would be a part of the report that this area is still open and
Oh,
the float time is this. There is fire in the area, but it's not affected at this point. Things like that.
if someone's subscribed or someone has contributed, do you have information on for them so that like something like an emergency would be sent out that would be pushed out, or they have to look at the website in order to see what it is that you posted? You know what I mean?
They would need to look at it. That's an interesting question. Is like a subscription element to it. The Forest Service just, I mean, I think it's considered an upgrade. I don't know all of the details, but our web portals have been revised, if not upgraded. What new features we have um, along those lines, I should talk with our webmaster.
So you've started the system for this year. Is it kind of just started, or you're well into it? Because
Start patrolling, well, cruise out right now. It's a training day, but even a training day, depending on how things go, we might do a report for today, and then pr if we continue on with the same protocol, would post that on Monday, just so we're not. It takes a moment to get on the computer, right? We could do more frequent posting, but um, when we decide to go, we'll populate it out. But we are starting to gather that information right now. Yesterday and
hmm.
today is a training day, so in theory, we could write a condition report based off of the last 2 days of river work.
Hmm. Cool. Thank you so much for your this program.
Yeah. Thanks, Teresa. Thanks,
Yeah.
James.